Hey folks, you found GSTV. That stands for Good Stuff Television. We celebrate entertainment from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. You know, the good stuff. And the cool thing about GSTV, you never know what's coming up next.
Look who's turning Diet 7-Up. I guess you have to give up a lot to fit into your costume, huh, Linda?
I don't have to give up anything, Don. Remember, I'm a star. Besides, any diet drink can help me fit into my costume.
Then why the Diet 7-Up, sweetie?
Because it's crisp, it's light, it doesn't have that funny diet taste. Why are you drinking it, Don?
Oh, I like the taste, too.
That's impossible.
Why is that?
Because you don't have any taste, Donnie, dear.
Oh, you're a beauty. Ooh, a dandy.
Whatever happened to TV's Wonder Woman Linda Carter? Well, truth be told, she's never been far away. Give me a few minutes and I'll bring you up to speed on what has been going on with this beautiful and amazingly talented lady. But first, let me introduce myself. Hi folks, my name is Dave Sundstrom, and I like to think of myself as something of a pop culture historian, especially when it comes to music, movies, and television. Simply put, I love talking about this stuff. So with that said, let's get rolling. You know, Linda Carter has always been something of a rebel. Despite studying classical dance and drama during her formative years, Linda dropped out of college to hang out with her high school rock band that went by the name of Just Us. However, within a couple of years, fame came knocking on Linda's door after winning the title of Miss World USA in 1972. That year, Linda went on to represent the United States at the Miss World pageant in London, where she finished in the final 15. In 1975, Linda was cast as the iconic DC superheroine Wonder Woman. The show ran for one season on ABC before switching networks and moving to CBS for a couple more seasons. The ABC series was set in the 40s, while the CBS version was a modern-day retelling. Personally, I'm more of a fan of the first season on ABC. I loved that wartime setting. The show just functioned well as a period piece. But that said, both versions of the show are a ton of fun to watch, and from what I understand, Linda preferred the updated version on CBS. She thought the modern-day setting provided the show with a greater variety of story opportunities. During that time, Linda also pursued a music career. Her early albums were well received here in the US, but achieved even greater popularity overseas. Of course, Linda's beauty was as much of a draw as her music was for fans all over the world. In fact, that center album cover there became a top-selling poster during the late 70s. After Wonder Woman, Linda was able to avoid being typecast and continue to work in television, movies, as well as music. Linda was also a spokesmodel for Maybelline throughout the 80s and Lens Express in the 90s.
Moist, wet, wonderful colors. Colors that lick your lips. Moisture Whip Colors by Maybelline, with moisturizers and a protective sunscreen to keep your lips very soft, very moist, very wet. And I think that's very wonderful.
By the turn of the century, as television and movie appearances slowed down just a bit, Linda decided to do a variety of theater projects. In 2005, Linda played Mama Morton in the West End London version of Chicago. In 2006, her rendition of When You're Good to Mama was included in the box set celebrating the 10th anniversary of Chicago. And in May of 2007, Linda began touring the US with her one-woman musical cabaret show titled An Evening with Linda Carter. The lovely lady to the left of Linda in the photo on your screen there is Linda's daughter, Jessie. So I said things slowed down a bit, but they did not come to a halt. A couple of roles that I remember Linda in were the 2001 independent film Super Troopers, as well as the 2005 Disney flick Sky High, where she played a high school principal with, you guessed it, superpowers. In 2015, Linda wrote and recorded 5 original songs for the video game Fallout 4, in which she herself stars. An EP of the songs from that game's soundtrack was released on iTunes in 2015, and the song Good Neighbor was nominated for Best Song by the National Academy of Video Game Trade Reviewers. Linda followed up her successful work on the Fallout 4 soundtrack with her 2018 album Red Rockin' Blues. Based on the glowing reviews that I'm seeing over on Amazon, it appears that the songs on that album might be some of her finest work as a singer. And just a few months ago, Linda unexpectedly dropped another new album that was ironically titled Unexpected. Always a fan favorite at comic conventions, Linda has become even more popular with that particular audience when she signed on to play the role of the President of the United States, Olivia Marsden, on the CW Supergirl series. She has publicly stated that she really enjoys working on the show and has even gone as far as to say working with the Supergirl crew is a heck of a lot of fun. Sticking with the world of comics, Linda is also a fan of Gal Gadot's portrayal of Wonder Woman and has worked with her to promote causes that she is passionate about. A few years back, the two visited the United Nations together to further women's rights and attend a ceremony celebrating Wonder Woman Day. Carter has said that she thinks that Gal is amazing. And spoiler alert, for those of you who stuck around for the end credits of Wonder Woman 1984, you know that there's a possibility that at some point in the future, Linda and Gal might get a chance to appear together on the big screen in a future Wonder Woman movie. Alright folks, I promised another classic Linda Carter TV commercial. Here it is.
Look who's turning Diet 7-Up. I guess you have to give up a lot to fit into your costume, huh, Linda?
I don't have to give up anything, Don. Remember, I'm a star. Besides, any diet drink can help me fit into my costume.
Then why the Diet 7-Up, sweetie?
Because it's crisp, it's light, it doesn't have that funny diet taste. Why are you drinking it, Don?
Well, I like the taste, too.
That's impossible.
Why is that?
Because you don't have any taste, Donnie, dear.
Oh, you're a beauty. Ooh, a dandy.
So that's it. Like I said, Linda has never been really too far away. For those of you who are fans of Linda's Wonder Woman, did you prefer the ABC version set in the 40s? Or did you like the CBS version that had a modern day setting? Let me know what you think in the comments section, and while you're at it, I'd love a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, and I would be absolutely honored if you considered subscribing to the channel. I talk about music, movies, and mostly TV from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. You know, the good stuff. But most importantly, and as always, thank you so much for watching.
Feast your eyes on that big world outside. It's a fact. Step out and don't look back. This is the time for having fun. You're never too old. Come on and follow me. I've got things to show you. Let yourself go up here. Relax and then before you know
And now, these messages.
When I first tried Fabergé Organics shampoo with pure wheat germ oil and honey, it was so good I told 2 friends about it. And they told 2 friends. And so on, and so on, and so on. And believe me, there's still nothing like the original Fabergé Organics. It gives me super shine, super body.
And super fresh-smelling hair.
Try it, and you'll tell your friends about it. And they'll tell their friends, and so on, and so on. Be sure and get the original Fabergé Organics shampoo and conditioner with pure wheat germ oil and honey.
One of my favorite shows from the early 80s is The Fall Guy. This is the show where Lee Majors stars as a Hollywood stuntman who also moonlights as a bounty hunter to make ends meet. I love this show for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, because it had the $6 Million Man in it. And I'll be darned if Mr. Majors didn't really seem to have a great sense of humor about his role as Colt Seavers. Of course, the other reason was the supporting cast, and if we're to get more specific, a certain young lady by the name of Heather. I was a big fan of Ms. Thomas's work on the show. And I was not alone. Ms. Thomas became a very popular character on the show, especially with the demographic of young men between the ages of 12 and 18. During that time, I worked as a store clerk at our local Kmart, and I remember both of these posters flying off the shelves. So what happened to Heather Thomas? Where did she go? Thomas married entertainment attorney Skip Brittenham, and although she continued to find work, she formally retired from acting in the late 90s and devoted time and attention to her daughter that she had with Brittenham. And over the years, Heather has become extremely involved in causes that she believes in. Thomas and Brittenham are joint hosts of a monthly fundraising breakfast gathering at their home, which has become known in Washington as the LA Cafe. Additionally, Thomas serves on the advisory boards of the Rape Foundation and the Amazon Conservation Team. So that's it. Did you enjoy Heather in The Fall Guy, or were you a fan of her in something else? Let me know in the comments section. And while you're at it, I would love a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, and I would be honored if you would consider subscribing to my channel. I talk about music, movies, and television, mostly from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. You know, the good stuff. But most importantly, and as always, thank you so much for watching.
Hey folks, you've found GSTV. That stands for Good Stuff Television. We celebrate entertainment from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. You know, the good stuff. And the cool thing about GSTV, you never know what's coming up next.
Tab Cola has a beautiful taste. So good for beautiful people. Tab Cola, beautiful to you and me. 'Cause every can has less than 2 calories. Tab Cola helps a beautiful shape. Just right for beautiful people. Tab Cola tastes so good to you. Great taste, low calorie. Tab.
When I think about late 70s television, the addition of Cheryl Ladd to the hit TV program Charlie's Angels ranks right up there. And Cheryl, already a seasoned TV veteran, made the very most of her moment. I still remember reading about Charlie's newest Angel in TV Guide. In addition to the full-page ad, TV Guide also ran an article on Ms. Ladd. Her first appearance was in a 2-hour episode that sent the Angels to Hawaii, the perfect opportunity to showcase all of Cheryl's talents. The premise behind Cheryl's arrival and then megastar Farrah Fawcett Major's departure was that Cheryl played Chris Monroe, Jill Monroe's little sister. Every bit as smart, feisty, and beautiful as Big Sis. During that second season, Farrah was contractually obligated to return for a handful of episodes, but Cheryl, well, she did such a great job on the show that many folks didn't seem to care that the show's biggest star was no longer solving mysteries for Charles Townsend on a weekly basis. The transition was a smooth one because, as I mentioned previously, Cheryl was already a showbiz veteran. Fans of Saturday morning television know that Cheryl's first brush with fame was as part of the animated all-girl band Josie and the Pussycats. Cheryl's pictured in the bottom right corner of that album cover there, and she played the lovably ditzy blonde drummer in the band, Melody Valentine. As a member of Josie and the Pussycats, Cheryl had an album which spawned a number of singles, although I don't believe any of them charted here in the US. After Josie and the Pussycats, Cheryl started making guest appearances on a number of primetime TV programs. One of my favorite appearances was when she appeared on Happy Days, where she played a beautiful movie star that Richie wins a date with. Obviously, Cheryl is a highlight in this episode, but so is Ron Howard. There's just something about his portrayal of wholesome Richie Cunningham and how he responds to Hollywood's visit to his hometown and high school. Well, it's Happy Days at its very best. After making it big on Charlie's Angels, Cheryl Ladd leveraged her newfound fame to jumpstart her music career, which had been dormant for years. Her self-titled debut album yielded a top 40 hit in the US called Think It Over. And Cheryl was an even bigger hit musically in Japan, where a couple of her songs were played on top of the closing credits on Charlie's Angels. Cheryl became such a popular recording artist in Japan that she continued to release music there, even after her US recording contract had ended. And after Charlie's Angels ran its course, Cheryl was at a point where she could pick and choose her roles, and I've got to say she chose a doozy when she signed on to play the Hollywood actress who became royalty in the television movie Grace Kelly. More TV and feature film opportunities were to follow for the rest of the decade. In 1989, as Batmania took over the nation once again, Ladd starred in a little science fiction film titled Millennium. I have very specific memories about this movie because I went to see it with a group of friends who thought it was one of the most unintentionally hilarious films they'd ever seen. Truthfully, while I think the premise of the movie is very intriguing, I have to agree that the execution just wasn't there. Maybe if the pacing of the film had been a little more crisp, and perhaps if the ending had just been a little bit different, well, it's possible that things would have turned out differently, and while I wasn't laughing at the screen like some of my friends, even I have to admit that it just wasn't great. After Millennium, I have to admit that I kinda lost track of Cheryl Ladd. So what has happened to Cheryl during the past couple of decades or so? Well, here's the scoop. First and foremost, I'm pleased to report that Cheryl has found lasting love with music producer Brian Russell, who she's been married to since 1981. From everything I can tell while doing my research, they are truly a happy couple who love to spend time together doing an amazing variety of things. And they both believe in getting involved in causes that they're passionate about. One of those worthy causes has been the prevention of child abuse. Cheryl has aligned herself with Child Help, whose programs and services help abused children from any situation and let them experience the kind of life they deserve, one filled with love. The goal of this organization is a simple one: put these children in an environment where they can feel compassion and kindness. To help raise money for Child Help, Cheryl has attached her name and provided her voice to a new Mrs. Beasley doll. Yep, good old Mrs. Beasley from the classic TV comedy Family Affair. While I loved the show as a young kid, I was never a fan of the doll, which I always thought was kind of creepy looking. But I have to say, since the proceeds from the sale of this Mrs. Beasley doll have done a whole lot of good for abused children, I'm completely on board with the revival of this classic children's toy. I mentioned earlier that Brian and Cheryl do lots of things together. One of those things is golf. Over the years, she's become an avid golfer who regularly plays on the Celebrity Pro-Am circuit. In fact, she's one of the most sought-after players worldwide, and for over 20 years has partnered with many of the best golfers from the PGA and LPGA tours. One of the highlights of Cheryl's golfing experiences was the opportunity to play alongside the great Arnold Palmer. Wow, I've got to say I'm extremely jealous of that one. Nicely done, Cheryl. Nicely done. In 2010, TV Land honored Charlie's Angels with their famed Pop Culture Award. Pictured here with former castmate Jacqueline Smith, Cheryl was on hand to receive the award and appeared to be having a great time that evening. Other recipients of this award have been Donnie and Marie Osmond, Sid and Marty Krofft, Paul Reubens, also known as Pee Wee Herman, as well as the cast from the original Star Trek TV series. And like I said earlier, Cheryl, really, she's never stopped acting. She's been a regular on TV shows like Las Vegas and has made many more guest appearances on other shows over the years. One of my favorite recent appearances by Ms. Ladd was on the miniseries The People vs. O.J. Simpson, where she played Bob Shapiro's wife, Linnell. So that's it. One last pick. TV sisters. It just warms the heart seeing the two of them together. Anyway, were you a fan of Cheryl Ladd? Are you a fan of Cheryl Ladd? And do you have a favorite memory? Let me know in the comments section. While you're at it, I would appreciate a thumbs up. And what the heck, why not subscribe to the channel? I talk about music, movies, and television, mostly from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. You know, the good stuff. But most importantly, and as always, thank you so much for watching. Janae Dubois has passed away. I'm not going to go into the details of her death. Nothing really to dwell on. We all eventually get old and die. It's just part of life. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a sad thing. I think what we all hope for is when we're gone, those who loved us and will miss us can celebrate our lives. And Janae's life was certainly one worth celebrating. Janae, of course, is probably best known as the Evans neighbor and Florida's best friend, Willona Woods, on the iconic TV sitcom Good Times. I've talked about my love for this show, especially the early seasons, in another video that I did on actor John Amos. If you haven't seen that one, I'll post a link to it at the end of this video. Janae was a big part of Good Times for all 6 seasons of the show. Her character may have seemed a little nosy and a little bit of a gossip, but the truth is that Willona had a heart of gold and would do anything and everything that she could to support her friends. And when Janet Jackson joined the show as Willona's adopted daughter Penny, Janae's character was developed even further, and she helped carry many episodes during those later seasons. Janae and Janet's friendship is one that would last a lifetime. As Janet's singing career blossomed, she cast Janae as her mother in a music video, and they never lost touch. Upon hearing about Janae's passing, Janet said this about her friend: "I saw firsthand how she broke stereotypes and changed the landscape for black women in entertainment. Thank you, Janae. I'll miss you." Speaking of music, Janae was an accomplished singer-songwriter herself, having co-written and sung the opening theme song for The Jeffersons, Moving On Up. While I like that song, I actually prefer the title track from her 1980 album, Queen of the Highway. The song is soulful and just a bit funky. Really great stuff. And as long as we're talking about that theme song, I've got to say that I really enjoyed Jennifer Hudson's version of that song during last year's live version of The Jeffersons. Much like Janae, that lady can really sing. In the early 90s, Janae would lend her voice to the Eddie Murphy project The PJs, where she earned an Emmy for her vocal work. And around the same time, she helped establish the Pan-African Film Festival, which is a nonprofit dedicated to the promotion of cultural understanding among peoples of African descent. Every year, this festival showcases over 150 great new films which celebrate the diversity and complexity of people of African descent. And as long as we're remembering Janae, I think it's worth mentioning that while she wasn't on screen during the recent live version of Good Times, which aired on ABC a few months ago, she was there, hanging out with cast members, both old and new, reliving great memories, and okay, I'm gonna say it, good times. So that's it. One last picture. Mother and daughter on TV show, great friends in real life. Alright, now it's your turn. Please share your memories in the comments section, and while you're at it, I would appreciate a thumbs up. Maybe share this video on Facebook or Twitter, and what the heck, why not subscribe to my YouTube channel? I talk about music, movies, and television, mostly from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. You know, the good stuff. But most importantly, and as always, thank you so much for watching.
And now, this message.
Hello, I'm Lauren Tweed. For the past 7 years, a lot has been written about me. But in the new issue of TV Guide, I speak for myself about what I experienced working on a television series, about the pressures and the insecurities, Sometimes it hurt to tell the truth about the past, but it sure helped me to be free of it.
Lauren Tweez as you've never known her before, exclusively in TV Guide.
MeTV, which stands for Memorable Television, is my absolute favorite TV network out there. For years I've been able to pick it up with an over-the-air antenna, and most of the time the signal and picture are pretty darn good. That said, I've always wished that I could just stream MeTV through my set-top box or over my phone or PC, and until recently, that just hasn't been possible, which is a shame because there are parts of the country where folks just can't get MeTV. The Friendly TV streaming service recently added MeTV to their channel lineup. And you know what? They didn't stop there. They've also got Heroes and Icons, better known as H&I, and Decades, and there's even more than that. Right now, Friendly TV has 9 channels that are dedicated to playing classic TV shows and movies 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And you know what? There's more on the way. The really cool thing is that between all of these channels, it's pretty darn easy to find most of the TV shows that we all loved when we were growing up. And have I mentioned that you get all this for just $6.99 a month? Quite frankly, if MeTV had a streaming service of its own, I'd be willing to pay that price. Now, I should point out that if you do subscribe and stay subscribed, Friendly TV does provide me with a bit of a financial incentive. So not only do you get a ton of great TV, but you get to support my YouTube channel as well. When I think back to the 70s and 80s, I don't think there was ever a better time for television. It was truly a golden age. There were big stars on even bigger shows, and when I think back to that period of time, I'm not sure there was a bigger show than Dallas. As a teenager watching Dallas, it seemed like everyone on that show was larger than life, and that included this lovely lady, Charlene Tilton, the actress who played Lucy Ewing. Being a big Happy Days fan, I remember Charlene from that show even before Dallas. And yes, that is Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen, actor Mark McClure, hanging out with Charlene in the bottom right corner there. Getting back to Dallas, even if you weren't a fan of the show, you knew about it. The show was a pop culture phenomenon here in the United States, and it was equally as popular in many other parts of the world. Charlene herself became quite the celebrity, and before you knew it, she was on the cover of all of the most widely read magazines here in the U.S. And you know you've really made it when you are offered a chance to host Dick Clark's New Year's Rockin' Eve, which, if you ask me, is still the best way to ring in the new year, even if Dick himself is no longer around. Charlene also made the obligatory guest spots on shows like Love Boat and Fantasy Island. Heck, she even hosted that infamous episode of Saturday Night Live that got comedian Charles Rocket fired for dropping the F-bomb on live TV. And somewhere along the way, it feels like I need to mention that Charlene single-handedly sold hundreds of thousands of abdominizers, which was a piece of molded plastic that somehow magically made sit-ups easier to do. And as a result, six-pack abs were just a measly $20 away. I never bought one. Looking at my less than stellar physique these days, in retrospect, maybe I should have. Because clearly, Charlene was getting some pretty darn good results using that thing. So what happened to Charlene, and what is she doing now? Well, I'm happy to report that she's doing pretty darn well. In 2004, she reunited with her Dallas castmates to reminisce about her time on the show. And then a few years later, made a handful of appearances on the Dallas reboot. Around the same time, Charlene also appeared on the UK television show Dancing on Ice. And it was while she was doing promotional work for that show that she really opened up about the fairly recent passing of her fiancé, cinematographer Chetty Hart, who tragically passed away from a heart attack just a couple of days before Christmas in 2010. At the time, Charlene was so filled with grief that she took comfort by drinking herself to the point where she could just get some sleep. And then at some point she realized that she could either follow Chetty to the grave or turn things around. And turn things around she did. Charlene decided to spend less time worrying about her next role and thinking about the past, and instead focused on ways that she could give of herself. Pictured above is a clip from Entertainment Tonight, right here on YouTube where they talk about her efforts to help raise money for children who are currently in foster programs. This is something that Charlene is super passionate about because she was in the foster care system herself as a child. Charlene is also a board member and ambassador for a not-for-profit group called Actors for Autism and can frequently be found helping to lead workshops designed to make people on the autistic spectrum feel like inclusion in the entertainment industry is a reality, not a dream. Another project that Charlene has been working on for decades now is her very talented daughter, Cherish Lee, who is both an actress and a singer. Cherish's father is country singer Johnny Lee, who had a pretty big hit in the early 80s titled Lookin' for Love. If I had to pick a favorite song from Cherish, I'd suggest you give Ones You Leave Behind a spin. I don't know if it is or not, but the song really sounds quite autobiographical. Okay, now it's your turn. Please share your memories of Charlene in the comments section, and while you're at it, I'd love a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, and I would be absolutely honored if you would consider subscribing to my channel. I talk about music, movies, and mostly television from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. You know, the good stuff. But most importantly, and as always, thank you so much for watching. Okay, trust me, I'm going to get to Judy Landers in just a moment, but first, I have to go on a quick tangent. Flashback to 1978 in a TV movie called BJ and the Bear. Of course, the TV movie became a TV series, and I became an avid viewer, a big fan of the show. So much so that I seriously contemplated a career in long-haul trucking. It seemed like an honest day's work, and you got to hit the open road with a chimp like Bear. Or some other cool pet. It didn't have to be exactly the same, but you get it. The long-haul trucker answers to no one. And as the show progressed, it became clear to me that being a long-haul trucker was also kind of a chick magnet. Each week, BJ would get involved with a beautiful girl, and one of those beautiful girls on the show became a regular during the 3rd season. Her name on the show was Stax. Yeah, I know that's pretty tacky when you think about it. And she was played by Judy Landers. Somewhere along the way, I realized trucking probably wasn't for me, but trust me, Judy made a very compelling argument for it. Oh yeah, and Bear too. Well, until he went crazy and started attacking people, but that, my friends, is a story for another day. So anyway, getting back to Judy, Ms. Landers was not an unknown actress when she joined the show. She, along with her sister Audrey, were pretty much the latest thing back then. They were all over TV as guest stars on various shows such as Love Boat, Vegas, Charlie's Angels, and Fantasy Island. And Judy was also on another one of my favorite shows from the 80s, Knight Rider. And even though I shouldn't mention it because it was such an odd show, she was also a regular on something called Madam's Place, and yes, I will admit to watching it, but only for Judy. Like I said, these girls were extremely popular back in the day. Hef tried to get them to pose for Playboy, which they did, but their layout wasn't your typical photo shoot. In other words, they kept their clothes on. I actually preferred their appearance at Runner's World. Turns out the sisters were into fitness and running, something that I've enjoyed over the years. Who'd have thunk? Years later, Runner's World would run the photos again during an anniversary issue. So where is Judy now? Well, here's a relatively recent picture of the sisters with their mother Ruth. As you can see, time has been very kind to both of them. Well, actually all 3 of them. Way to go, Ruth. Judy has been married to former Major League Baseball pitcher Tom Niedenfuer since November of 1987. They have 2 daughters, Lindsay, born in 89, and Christy, born in 91. After taking time off to live her life and raise her kids, Judy once again collaborated with her sister, Audrey, on a couple of children's shows in the late 90s called the Hug-a-Bug Club and the Treehouse Club. As you can see from the photo on the right with Judy's daughters, the apple hasn't fallen too far from the tree. In fact, daughter Christy competed in the Miss USA pageant representing the fine state of Tennessee. And lest you thought that I was going to forget about Audrey, she married businessman Donald Berkowitz in May of 1988. They have 2 children, twins Adam and Daniel. They were born in 1993. This is Daniel here. He is an accomplished composer, songwriter, musician, all-around talented guy. And he's collaborating with his mother right now on a pop musical, something kind of edgy and dark according to what I could find on the internet. So that's it.
Do you remember Judy and her sister Audrey? And if so, did you have a favorite? Audrey had a pretty successful music career. I can see why Daniel's going down that path. But that probably doesn't stop me from picking Team Judy. Anyway, please share your memories in the comment section below, and while you're at it, please click on the thumbs up icon, and why not consider subscribing to my channel. I talk about music, movies, and television, mostly from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. You know, the good stuff. But most importantly, and as always, thank you so much for watching.
You've got a great pair of legs.
Need a little magic to make your tummy disappear? Try my magic. Legs Control Top Pantyhose with feel-free control. Legs Control Top holds you in all the right places, but you feel free as a breeze.
Stretching, bending, standing. There's one pantyhose that's always fitting. Nothing beats a great pair of legs.
Hey folks, you've found GSTV. That stands for Good Stuff Television. We celebrate entertainment from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. You know, the good stuff. And the cool thing about GSTV, you never know what's coming up next.
Growing up, I thought that Lori Partridge was the complete package. Beauty, brains, and musical talent up the wazoo. Lori was pretty much perfect. Her only flaw was that she wasn't real. So with that said, this video is about Lori's real-life alter ego, Susan Day, who it turns out is even more amazing than any of the characters that she ever played on television. In just a few minutes, I'll provide an update regarding what she's been up to lately. But first, let's look back at where she has been. So let's start with Susan's most recognizable role, at least for me. After a couple of years of modeling, Susan landed the role of Lori Partridge when she was 17. The show would run on ABC television for 4 seasons. And in addition to being a ratings hit, the fictional family had a bunch of real-life musical chart toppers, including 1970's biggest hit song, at least here in the US, titled I Think I Love You. You know, I've got to believe that this was all very exciting for Susan, who won the part of Lori Partridge even though she had no acting experience. Little known fact, an aspiring young singer-actress from Australia had originally been slated to play Lori, but at the last moment, she passed on the role. We'll talk more about that particular lady later on in this video. In addition to lending some killer vocals, Lori Partridge was also the keyboard player in the band. Susan herself did not know how to play the piano. At one point asked if the show would provide her with lessons so that she could perform more realistically and perhaps at some point in the future actually play the music herself. That request was denied. From what I understand, none of the actors, even David Cassidy and Shirley Jones, were really hired for their musicianship. In fact, in the pilot episode of The Partridge Family, David Cassidy, yes, David Cassidy is actually lip-syncing to someone else's vocals. Speaking of David Cassidy, from everything that I can tell, it does seem that for a brief period of time he and Susan were really together as a couple. However, as David detailed in his autobiography, Come On Get Happy, that relationship was doomed because he saw her more as a sister than a lover. In the book, he says that her wholesome looks just didn't do it for him. Truthfully, I don't know what David was talking about. Case in point is one of my favorite movies from the early 80s titled Looker. Written and directed by Michael Crichton, this film stars Albert Finney, James Coburn, and a very sexy Susan Day. One role that Susan had passed on before Looker was that of Sandy in Grease. Remember when I mentioned that an aspiring Australian singer and actress had passed on the Lori Partridge role? Well, that young lady was Olivia Newton-John. So Susan passing on Grease was just her way of, albeit unknowingly, returning the favor years later. From 1986 to 1992, she knocked it out of the park as Grace Van Owen on NBC Television's LA Law. During that show's first 6 seasons, Day was nominated for an Emmy 3 times and a Golden Globe 6 times for her work on the show. She actually won the award in 1988. Susan's final on-screen appearance was in 2004 when she appeared in 2 episodes of Third Watch as a character named Dr. Breen. After that, Susan decided it was time to live a different kind of life, something away from the fast pace of the entertainment industry. In 1988, Day had married for the second time, this time to television producer Bernard Safransky. She has a daughter who was born in 1978 from that first marriage. Susan and Bernard reside in a lovely little northern Catskills community in the state of New York, where she has become very involved in many of the cultural and civic elements of the area. More on that in a moment. But before we go there, I should mention that Susan has served as a board member of the Rape Treatment Center at the UCLA Medical Center. From what I can tell, her involvement with the center has been something that she's felt very strongly about. In fact, Susan is so passionate about helping victims of this particularly heinous crime that she co-narrated a documentary on campus rape with her former LA Law co-star Corbin Burnson. Now let's get back to Susan's cultural and civic involvement in New York. There's a video right here on YouTube from 2013 where Susan talks about a Battle of the Bands competition that she was helping to promote as well as get monetary support for. From the interview, it's clear to see that she's such a vibrant and inspirational force for good in her community, and the folks in upstate New York are truly lucky to have her. Although she was promoting a cultural event, Susan also spent quite a bit of time talking about the community as a whole and that deep sense of connectedness that she feels to the area. As the video winds down, the interviewer asks Susan if she ever misses acting, and if she would ever think about coming out of retirement and doing it again. Her answer was a good one. She didn't say no, only that it would have to be a very good role. That said, maybe what she's doing now is a more noble pursuit. Based on the interview, I'd say that she certainly seems happy and content with the choices that she's made over the years. And if you think about it, what more can any of us really ask for? Her life, from her youth to the more mature and wise woman that she is now, has been nothing short of picture perfect, if you ask me. One more thing that I've got to mention are the 2 movies that Susan made with John Ritter back in the early 80s. They were titled The Comeback Kid and Sunset Limousine, both TV movies. Longtime channel subscribers know that I'm a big fan of John Ritter, and I've got to say that I loved watching these 2 act together. Alright, now it's your turn. Please feel free to share your memories in the comments section, and if you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up, and maybe even consider subscribing to the channel. I talk about music, movies, and television, mostly from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. You know, the good stuff. But most importantly, and as always, thank you so much for watching.
Hey, watch this.
Lifesavers Roll Candy takes Suzanne Summers back home.
I did that better when I was a kid here in San Bruno, California, because my dad would give me cherry Lifesavers for every cartwheel. So I did lots of them, because I'd do anything for Lifesavers candy and Dad. Juicy, good Lifesavers. They're like coming home again to San Bruno. I still love them both.
If you were an avid television watcher during the 70s and 80s, then this face should be a pretty darn familiar one. Yep, we're talking about Morgan Fairchild today. In this video, I'm going to provide a brief look back at Morgan's career, and then I'll provide an update regarding what she's been doing lately. Truthfully, I can't remember the first time that I saw Morgan Fairchild on TV, but I'm quite certain it wasn't on the daytime soap opera Search for Tomorrow, where she played a character named Jennifer Phillips from 1973 to 1977. Instead, I think it might have actually been on Happy Days. Airing during the show's 5th season in 1977, this episode titled My Fair Fonzie had Morgan guest starring as a snobby upper crust kind of gal who was out to make the Fonz look foolish. It is also entirely possible that I may have seen her on an episode or 2 of Love Boat. And she was also on Mork and Mindy for a while as a recurring character. And this was all really before she hit it big, before she really stepped into the spotlight. Soon Morgan went from guest starring in TV shows to being the headliner in weekly shows like Flamingo Road and Paper Dolls. She also starred in the theatrical motion picture The Seduction, while Rotten Tomatoes calls this film a grade Z erotic thriller and says that the performances by Fairchild and her co-star Andrew Stevens were subpar, this didn't stop the movie from becoming very popular at video stores during the 80s. Yep, The Seduction is a true guilty pleasure. So, before the internet, another way to gauge just how famous a celebrity was would be to go to your grocery store and scan the covers of the magazines near the checkout. And as you might expect, back then Morgan graced hundreds of covers. Of course, back in the day, the greatest honor of all was to be on the cover of TV Guide, and Morgan was given that specific honor multiple times during her career. Wait, did I say the greatest honor of all? There is perhaps one thing even more awesome than being on the cover of TV Guide, and that, my friends, is to be in a Pee Wee Herman movie. Seriously, folks, this is the pinnacle. Where do you go from here? There really isn't much more to accomplish once you've starred in a movie with the great one. So, what has happened since then? Well, the truth of the matter is that Morgan really never left us. That said, her work hasn't always been on screen. Throughout the late 80s and early 90s, Morgan used her fame to become an early celebrity advocate in the fight against AIDS. Throughout her career, Morgan has never been shy about making her voice heard when it comes to the things that are most important to her. And like I said, Morgan really never left the small screen. For as long as I can remember, she's been a welcome presence on shows like Friends, as well as the comedic spy drama Chuck. In 2012, Morgan was signed to host a show on the Lifetime network titled Baby Boomers in America. Being a baby boomer herself, Morgan's partnership with the show made a lot of sense, and quite frankly, the show was not only informative, but a lot of fun to watch. In 2014, Morgan made an appearance on CNN to celebrate the life of Robin Williams, who had recently passed away. Ever articulate and really good at telling a story, she talked about the very first time that she saw Williams while he was filming an episode of Happy Days, and how her agent had told her not to take the part on Mork and Mindy. According to Fairchild, she told her agent, "Robin Williams is a genius. I'd work with him for free." Even more recently, in 2017, Morgan returned to her soap opera roots by joining the cast of Days of Our Lives for 17 episodes as a character named Angelica Devereaux. Morgan is also extremely active on Twitter with over 100,000 followers. Morgan likes to do a lot of retweeting, so if you choose to follow her, you definitely get a sense about what's going on in her mind right now. You might be surprised to discover that the things that concern her have less to do with Hollywood and focus more on the tumultuous world that we live in. And Morgan's tweets and retweets on Twitter haven't escaped the notice of other journalists. In fact, a few years ago, the Daily Beast wrote an article about Morgan's insightful tweets, calling her a badass foreign policy wonk, and saying that her Twitter posts are some of the best sources for consistently reliable foreign policy information and analysis. And this year, Morgan once again returned to the world of soap operas, this time appearing in Logo TV's pilot for a new show called Melange. As you can see, Morgan stays very busy. While maybe not in the spotlight in exactly the same way that she was during her 80s heyday, she is still relevant and extremely active despite the fact that she recently celebrated her 70th birthday. What? Did I just say that? Holy cow, that's amazing. So that's it. One more picture. I've got to go back to a high point in Morgan's career, one of my favorite movies of all time. A classic, made even better by Morgan's tongue-in-cheek performance near the end of the film. Alright, now it's your turn. Please share your memories in the comments section, and while you're at it, I would love a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, and I would be honored if you would consider subscribing to my channel. I talk about music, movies, and television, mostly from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. You know, the good stuff. But most importantly, and as always, thank you so much for watching.
The girls are prettier
In the Bahamas,
songs are wittier,
in the Bahamas,
days are lazier,
in the Bahamas,
rhythm crazier,
in the Bahamas,
all day long. The sun, the sand, and the sea, nights are strong, to put it romantically. It's better in the Bahamas. It's better in the Bahamas. If you're looking for a place you can play in the Bahamas, it's better in every way. The breeze is balmier in the Bahamas. Trees are palmier in the Bahamas. Fishing sportier in the Bahamas. Hotels resortier in the Bahamas. All day long, the sun, the sand, and the sea. Try it once, we guarantee you'll agree. It's better in the Bahamas. It's better in the Bahamas. By now you should know what we're trying to say. In the Bahamas it's better. In the Bahamas it's better. In the Bahamas it's better in every way.
We Got It Made always kinda reminded me of Three's Company in reverse. Instead of a guy living with two girls, you've got a girl living with two guys. Terry Copley was the girl who, in this case, was the live-in maid on this sitcom that ran for 1 year on NBC, and then a few years later was revived for another year as a first-run syndicated program. And while I didn't mind the show at all, in fact I thought it was quite fun, I've got to say that it had one of the worst theme songs ever written. Seriously, whoever wrote the thing was phoning it in. Very few lyrics and a cliched 80s musical arrangement that had to seem old and tired even way back then. So now that I'm done ranting about the theme song, I will say that the cast wasn't bad, although Matt McCoy was replaced when the show returned. And Terry Copley, well, she was the best of the bunch. In many ways, she reminded me of a young Suzanne Summers. She brightened up every scene that she was in, and I really thought that she was going to be a huge star. Of course, that didn't happen. Why? Well, the first thing that I'd point to would be the way that the show was marketed. Where Three's Company had the full faith of ABC during its run on the network, I get the feeling that NBC wanted the show to be crazier, nuttier, and perhaps a bit more risque than it actually was. I always felt like We Got It Made worked best when it focused on the blossoming friendship of the three main characters. It also allowed Copley to actually hone her acting skills, which were still fairly rough during her 2 seasons on the show. Those opportunities, sadly, were often cast aside in favor of screen roles that more often than not highlighted Copley's more obvious talents. I do remember watching this movie way back in 1984, how could I not? Along with Copley, you had Tim Daly and Potsy Weber himself, Anson Williams. I guess the best thing that I can say about the movie is that the cast rose above the material. I doubt that while Copley was making that movie, she could have predicted that about a half-decade later, she would actually accept an offer from Hugh Hefner and team to pose for his magazine. Over the years, Copley has reflected on that particular choice and acknowledged that it was a mistake, at least for her. But really, it's hard to blame her. I'm sure that she was looking for a way to boost a career that had lost a little bit of steam. Although she had been able to land numerous guest roles on various TV programs, the movie offers that came her way were for low-budget B and C-grade films, and her personal relationships hadn't worked out all that well either. By 1990, Copley was twice divorced, her first marriage being to fake Luke Duke here, Christopher Mayer. Yep, things weren't going all that well. When she was just a little girl, Terry had a neighbor who used to share Bible stories and treats with her and the other children who lived nearby. She has shared that at that young age, she felt a love from a higher power, only to later lose focus when she prioritized her acting career above all else. Terry has written a book about her newly rediscovered relationship with God. If you're interested in reading it, I'll post a link to it in the description field of this video. Over the past couple of decades, Terry has become even more fervent in her faith and belief in a supreme being that loves her, cares for her, and wants to see her succeed. There's a great video on the 700 Club's CBN website where she talks about a return to her roots. She also talks about her recent return to the entertainment industry, making faith-based motion pictures such as Redeemed. I haven't watched this one, but when I do, I'll post a review of it here on the channel. Even with all of her efforts to find spiritual peace, there are moments in everyone's life where things don't always go as planned. And I've got to believe that this is the case with a little bit of craziness that surrounded Terry and her daughter, who appeared on Dr. Phil Together a couple of years ago. On that episode, Terry expressed great concern that her pregnant daughter's boyfriend was not treating her the way that he should. I was hoping to find an update or something, hoping to find if things had gotten any better by visiting Terry's Facebook and Twitter pages, but both social media channels really haven't had any updates from her since 2018. End of the day, I believe that just like Terry did in the early 90s, she has stepped away again from all of the noise to focus on what is most important, her family. And I am confident that this positive woman, who has boatloads of faith, will once again find the light in her life that she is looking for. Alright, let's close this video with Terry's 1989 guest appearance on another one of my favorite TV shows, Quantum Leap. In this particular episode, which takes place in the mid-70s, Terry gets to play a character who sounds and acts just a little bit like Marilyn Monroe, who I understand was something of a real-life influence on her. Alright, what do you think? Did you enjoy We Got It Made? And do you remember that horrible theme song? Please share your memories in the comments section below, and while you're at it, I would appreciate it if you clicked on the thumbs up icon. And why not consider whether or not you'd like to subscribe to my channel? I talk about music, movies, and television, mostly from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. You know, the good stuff. But most importantly, and as always, thank you so much for watching.